Imagine flying into a new country, notebook in hand, ready to cover a story that could change lives. You're a journalist, passionate about uncovering truth and amplifying voices that are often silenced. But instead of being welcomed, you find yourself distrusted, dismissed, and even harassed. This is the story of Sophie, a white female journalist who traveled to West Africa to report on women's rights, and the racism and sexism she faced along the way. Sophie had always believed in the power of journalism. Back in Europe, she'd covered politics, corruption, and elections, but what really fueled her wasn't the headlines. It was the human stories, especially those of women fighting for dignity and equality. So when her editor called and said,
"We want you to cover the growing women's rights movement in West Africa,"
Sophie's heart leapt. This was her chance to tell stories that mattered on a global scale. She prepared carefully. She read up on local history, colonial legacies, and women's grassroots movements. She even spent weeks learning basic phrases in the local language. Greetings, thank yous, simple questions. She wanted to show respect. When her plane landed, she felt both nervous and exhilarated. The heat hit her immediately, along with the noise of a bustling airport. She clutched her notebook tightly and told herself,
"This is it. This is where real stories live."
At first, everything seemed to go well. Sophie attended rallies where women marched with signs demanding justice. She interviewed young activists who spoke passionately about ending child marriage and pushing for better education.
"We've been silenced too long. If we don't speak, who will?"
Sophie scribbled down every word, feeling honored to be there. But cracks soon appeared. Some activists refused her requests for interviews. At first, she thought they were just busy. But soon, one woman told her directly,
"We don't need a foreign woman to tell our story. Every time someone like you comes here, the world pays attention to what you write, not what we've been saying for years."
Another activist was even sharper.
"This is the white savior thing all over again. You parachute in, collect our pain, publish it, and then leave. Meanwhile, we're still here fighting."
The words cut Sophie deeply. She wanted to say, "That's not me. I'm here to listen, not to steal your voice." But she realized something important. Her intentions didn't erase how her presence was perceived. In a post-colonial society, her whiteness carried weight. She wasn't just Sophie, the journalist. To some, she was a reminder of centuries of outsiders controlling the narrative. For the first time in her career, Sophie wondered, am I part of the problem? If racism made Sophie an outsider, sexism made her invisible. When she approached male officials for interviews, politicians, religious leaders, business owners, many refused to take her seriously. Instead of engaging with her questions, they made comments about her appearance.
"Why does such a beautiful woman want to ask about politics?"
"This topic is too dangerous for a woman. Go write about fashion or food."
Some refused outright.
"Send a man from your team. We'll talk to him."
But Sophie didn't have a team. She was the team. Every day felt like a battle. Not against deadlines, not against the story itself, but against walls of prejudice that kept pushing her back. One evening, after another humiliating meeting where she'd been dismissed, Sophie sat in her small hotel room staring at her notes. She felt defeated. Maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't be here, she thought. But then she flipped through her recordings, the voices of the women she had spoken to. Brave, determined women who had welcomed her, trusted her, and shared their struggles. And it clicked. Sophie realized she didn't need validation from powerful men or skeptics who saw her only through the lens of history. She needed to stand with the women who had trusted her. From then on, she changed her approach. She spent long days shadowing female activists, walking with them in markets, sitting in their homes, attending late-night meetings where strategies were whispered in candlelight. She spoke less. She listened more. She let the women decide what mattered and what the world needed to hear. At the same time, she started recording her own experiences of being dismissed. Not to center herself, but to illustrate how sexism was so pervasive that even she, a foreign journalist with press credentials, was belittled and shut down. Her story became not just about African women fighting for rights, but about how women everywhere, regardless of race, were undermined in different ways. When Sophie's article was finally published, it made waves. It told of African women leading the fight for justice, refusing to be silenced. But it also exposed how sexism crossed cultural borders. and how racism complicated international solidarity. One powerful line read, "In this country, I was both privileged and powerless. Privileged because my passport opened doors. Powerless because my gender kept those doors shut in my face." The piece sparked global discussion. Women's organizations shared it widely. Some praised Sophie for amplifying the movement without overshadowing it. Others used it to highlight the importance of local journalists telling their own stories. Sophie didn't mind the debate. In fact, she welcomed it, because the whole point of her work was to start conversations that mattered. Sophie's experience reminds us of something uncomfortable but important. Prejudice is rarely simple. Racism made her an outsider. Sexism made her invisible. And together, they almost silenced her. But she found a way forward, not by dominating the narrative, but by stepping back, listening, and letting those on the front lines guide the story. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. But it was honest. So now I want to ask you, do you think Sophie was treated unfairly because of her race, her gender, or both? And what responsibilities do journalists, especially women, have when they enter spaces that are not their own? How can they avoid reinforcing harmful narratives while still shining a light on important struggles? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear different perspectives. And if you found this story thought-provoking, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories about racism and sexism from around the world.